All right, so I'm 27-year-old female, and my husband, 29-year-old male, have been married for 6 years. He is my best friend, and I love him so much. We married pretty young, and a lot has changed since. When we got married, both of us were Christians, and about 3 years ago, I left Christianity while he, to this day, remains committed to his faith. This isn't a huge stressor in our relationship, but is something that has caused some tension. So my main concern when thinking about staying married to him is our intimacy life. I can remember maybe a few times that it has been fun and or pleasurable, but I have to be pretty intoxicated for that to be the case. I don't really want to be in a marriage for the rest of my life where I have to be drunk to enjoy intimacy, and I feel like I've developed a bit of a drinking problem because of it. Especially the first few years of our marriage, we would have intimacy nearly every night, and I had to have a few drinks just to be able to tolerate it. And of course, I have hidden that from him a lot because I don't want him to feel self-conscious about it. I mean, how would anyone feel knowing their partner has to be drunk to have intimacy with them? Now, I know what you're thinking, and yes, I do have intimacy trauma in my past. I was sexually abused by a family friend as a kid and raped as a teenager. I also had some hurtful relationships as a very young adult before getting married. It's a lot. And I've been in therapy for this for quite some time now, and while it's become tolerable, it hasn't really resolved. So I guess I'm at an impasse here. I feel so scared at the idea of having to have intimacy for the rest of my life that I don't want to have. I don't enjoy it at all, and I wish I could just never do it again, honestly. But at the same time, I'm in love with my husband. We're starting to have conversations about having kids, and this is the main thing holding me back. I feel like once kids enter the picture, divorce is off the table because of how it affects them. So I guess I'm feeling scared. I don't know what to do. Do I divorce someone just because of the intimacy? I like to remind myself that that's only one small part of a relationship. He's my best friend in every way. But I know there's resentment on his side because he very much needs that physical piece to feel fulfilled in a relationship. It has been a very recurrent issue in our marriage. It also makes me feel like a shitty wife because I'm not able to satisfy a basic need of his. I feel awful about myself, and he feels like it's because I'm not attracted to him, which is not true at all. I actually find him really attractive. I feel like no matter how much I tell him that it's not a matter of attraction, it's just my own issues. He just doesn't hear me. If you've read this far, thank you for listening to my word, vomit. I guess I just want advice from people who have maybe experienced something similar or who have some insight into this situation. I have known other intimacy trauma survivors to go on and have meaningful intimacy lives. I'm just feeling really hopeless that that's ever in the cards for me. It almost feels selfish to stay with him if that's how he feels intimacy and closeness, because I feel like I'll never be able to be that for him. I feel guilty, and I don't know how to fix it. And I don't know what the right move is here. To add, my husband does know about my intimacy trauma. I disclosed everything to him before we were married, and he knows that's where a lot of my issues stem from. I'm not hiding anything from him, and he's very aware I'm in therapy for this very thing. My issue is that I'm beginning to lose hope I will ever improve, and I don't want to keep him in an unfulfilling relationship if that's the case. We love each other, but if divorce is what is best, I'm open to considering that. He, on the other hand, is not open to considering that. So it would be very hurtful to him to hear that I am. Almost forgot, because this will probably get lost in the comments. There have been so many insightful, thought-provoking, kind, and compassionate comments on this post. While I cannot respond to every comment, I just want to thank those of you who took the time to read through my long post and share your experiences and advice. Reading through a lot of y'all's comments has made me realize I A, need to find an intimacy therapist and or a mental health specialist who deals with intimacy trauma specifically, B, involve my husband in that process more than I have, and C, have an open and honest conversation with him about how I feel. Even though he knows all the facts, it's been scary to share my feelings on this matter because it's vulnerable and I'm afraid to hurt him. I also want to say I'm deeply sorry to everyone here who has experienced similar things as I have. It's been healing for me to hear about many of y'all's stories of overcoming this and gives me hope for my own situation. Much love and thank you again. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I don't think forcing yourself to have intimacy that you dislike is the answer. It will just make you associate intimacy with unpleasantness even more than you already do. Can you tell him that you want to put a pause on intimacy for at least 6 months while you seek intimacy therapy? If that's a deal breaker for him, fine. You have your answer. If you are willing to provide other types of services during that time that aren't related to intimacy, great. He can temporarily get his needs met that way. If after 6 months of intensive therapy, things are still the same, you have your answer. Divorce. If things are improving, then you have your answer. There's hope for the marriage. Comment 2. Hey friend, I'm very similar. I can't have intimacy unless I'm under the influence. I was also sexually abused as a child and raped multiple times as an adult. It's a sign that you aren't healed from your trauma. Needing to use alcohol to cope with intimacy is a common trauma response. Have you ever received trauma-informed therapy or worked with a group at a RAP crisis center? Working on connecting with your body is so important. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me. So, after reading all your comments and reflecting on my situation, I decided to take some concrete steps. I found an intimacy therapist who specializes in intimacy trauma and made an appointment. I also sat down with my husband and had a really open conversation about how I've been feeling. It was hard, and there were a lot of tears, but it felt like a necessary step. The first session with the intimacy therapist was eye-opening. She suggested that my husband join us for some of the sessions, so he could better understand what I'm going through. He was hesitant at first, but agreed. We started going together, and it felt like we were making some progress. He began to understand that my issues with intimacy were not about him, but about my past trauma. It was a relief to see him starting to get it, but then things took a turn. During one of our sessions, the therapist suggested we try some exercises at home to help me feel more comfortable with intimacy. They were simple things like holding hands and making eye contact, but even those felt overwhelming to me. My husband was patient at first, but I could see the frustration building. He wanted to help, but he also wanted to feel desired, and I just couldn't give him that. One night after a particularly tough session, we had a big fight. He said he felt like he was walking on eggshells around me and that he didn't know how to act anymore. I told him I felt pressured and that it was making things worse. We both said things we didn't mean, and he ended up sleeping on the couch. It was the first time we'd ever done that, and it felt like a huge crack in our relationship. The next day, we tried to talk it out, but it was clear that we were both hurting. He admitted that he was struggling with the idea that our intimacy life might never improve. I told him I was scared that I would never be able to give him what he needed. It felt like we were at an impasse. Then, a couple of days later, something happened that forced a hard choice on me. I found out I was pregnant. It was a complete shock. We hadn't been trying, and with everything going on, it felt like the worst possible timing. I didn't know how to tell my husband. I knew he would be happy, but I was terrified. I wasn't sure I could handle a pregnancy and a baby with everything else going on. When I finally told him, his reaction was exactly what I expected. He was overjoyed. He hugged me and said this was the best news he'd ever heard. But I couldn't share his excitement. I felt trapped. I knew that having a baby would make everything more complicated. I didn't want to bring a child into a marriage that felt so unstable. I decided to talk to my therapist about it. She helped me see that I needed to make a decision, and that either choice would have consequences. I could either keep the baby and try to make things work with my husband, or I could consider other options. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. In the end, I decided to have a baby unaliving. I knew it would be devastating for my husband, but I felt like it was the only way I could take care of myself. I told him, and he was heartbroken. He begged me to reconsider, but I had made up my mind. It was a painful process, and it put even more strain on our relationship. After the baby unaliving, things between us were tense. We tried to go back to therapy, but it felt like we were just going through the motions. My husband was distant, and I felt like I had lost a part of myself. We were both grieving in our own ways, and it felt like we were growing further apart. One night, I found him crying in the living room. He said he didn't know if he could keep doing this. He loved me, but he felt like we were stuck in a cycle of pain and disappointment. I told him I felt the same way. We both knew that something had to change, but we didn't know how to fix it. As we talked, I realized that a lot of our issues stemmed from our different backgrounds and experiences. My husband grew up in a loving, stable family, while my childhood was marked by trauma and abuse. He had always been my rock, but now it felt like we were on different paths. I started to see that maybe we weren't as compatible as I had always thought. I remembered a conversation we had early in our relationship. We were talking about our dreams for the future, and he said he wanted a big family. I told him I wasn't sure if I wanted kids, but he said he was willing to wait until I was ready. Now it felt like that dream was slipping away. I knew he deserved to have the family he always wanted, and I wasn't sure I could give him that. In the end, we decided to take a break. We needed time to figure out what we wanted and if we could make this work. It was a painful decision, but it felt like the right one. We both needed space to heal and to see if we could find a way back to each other. As I packed my bags and prepared to stay with a friend for a while, I felt a mix of emotions. I was sad, scared, and uncertain about the future. But I also felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this break would give us the clarity we needed. Maybe we could find a way to rebuild our relationship. Or maybe we would realize that it was time to let go. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for giving my cheating husband another chance only to find him talking to another woman again? I'm currently pregnant with baby number 4. I have 2 older kids with my ex-husband and a 2-year-old with him. Previous marriage when I was 18, 23 years old, and currently married for 6 years. Well, when our youngest was born, we agreed I would stay home and take care of the kids while he provided. All I can say is it has been a nightmare, depending on him financially. He calls me lazy and pig sometimes when the house was messy because I wasn't feeling good. Then last year, I caught him talking to a woman, and it really messed me up. I got depression, which didn't help me much. He stopped talking to her but resented me for it. He said I deserved it because I'm such a witch. And all this time he throws in my face that I don't work and I ain't worth a damn. Then I caught him watching porn, so that tore me up because he was looking at women that looked so different from me. So it broke my heart. All I wanted was the man he promised me he was, and he lied through his teeth. Now all my savings are gone. All the stability I had before I met him 6 years ago is gone. And I'm pregnant with baby number 4, which was a total surprise. Last night he told me he was done working for me and my kids and to get the frick out. He told me not to touch him and he slept on the floor, so he was going off and off till 3 a.m. Then wakes up at 6 a.m. yelling that I'm such a stupid intimacy worker and why I left him on the floor. I said, because you told me not to touch you. And he said, it was a test, you stupid witch, and you failed. He then went to my teenager's room and my preteen and told them to pack and leave, that he was done with us. He withheld my important documents like kids' shot records and social security cards and one of my kids' phones. He refused to let me get them, and I drove off to my parents' house. Guys, this isn't even the worst part. There's so much more I'd rather not say, but can someone please tell me it's okay to let go of your fricked up, hurtful, manipulative husband? Tell me it will be freaking okay because I can't think straight. I'm so drained I can't do this anymore. The back and forth and all the mind-freaking games he does to me. Can someone tell me the sun will shine again, even after 4 kids? I guess I'll be staying alone forevermore because how the frick did I get rid of one hurtful husband and ended with another 10 times worse? No, I'm not a troll. I wish I was. I'm just a stupid freaking witch that lost her mind and forgot what real love and respect is. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Imagine this was happening to your daughter. What would you tell her to do? You will look back at this in the not-too-distant future, and you'll realize that this is a gift from the universe. You were miserable with your hurtful piece of shoot husband, and now is your chance at a happy life. It will take some hard work and sacrifices, but you can do this. Get a good lawyer who can guide you through the divorce, and make sure that you and your children get everything you deserve. Good luck. You got this. Comment 2. You need to document everything, file a police report, and try for an order of protection to get him out of the house. That is your house as well as the kids. If anyone should be leaving, it should be him. He withheld my important documents like kids' shot records and social security cards, and one of my kids' phone. He refused to let me get them. You can call the police to escort you into the house to get whatever you want out of it. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through all this. So, after that night, I stayed at my parents' house for a few days to clear my head. My parents were supportive, but I could tell they were worried about how I was going to manage with 4 kids. I started looking for a job immediately, but it was tough because I hadn't worked in years. I felt like I was drowning, but I knew I had to keep going for my kids. A week later, I got a call from my husband. He was apologetic, saying he wanted to talk things through. I was hesitant, but I agreed to meet him in a public place. We met at a coffee shop, and he seemed genuinely remorseful. He promised to go to therapy and work on his issues. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't forget everything he had done. I told him I needed time to think. During this time, I found a part-time job at a local grocery store. It wasn't much, but it was a start. My parents helped with the kids while I worked. I also started seeing a therapist to help me deal with my depression and anxiety. It was hard, but I was slowly starting to feel a bit more like myself. A month later, my husband called again, saying he had started therapy and was making progress. He wanted to come home and be a family again. I was torn. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part of me was scared of going back to the same toxic environment. I decided to give him one more chance, but with conditions. He had to continue therapy, and we would go to couples counseling together. The first few weeks were tense. He was trying, but there were still moments when his old behavior would slip through. One night, we had a huge argument about money. He accused me of not contributing enough, and I reminded him that I was doing my best. It was a heated exchange, and I almost packed up and left again. But then, something surprising happened. He broke down and admitted he was scared of losing us. It was the first time I had seen him so vulnerable. We continued with therapy, and slowly, things started to improve. He was more involved with the kids and even helped around the house. I was still cautious, but I could see he was making an effort. My therapist helped me set boundaries and communicate better, which made a big difference. Then, 2 months in, I got a full-time job offer at a local office. It was a huge relief, but it also meant more responsibility. I was worried about how we would manage, but my husband assured me he would step up. He even suggested we hire a part-time nanny to help with the kids. It was a big step, and I was cautiously optimistic. But just when things seemed to be getting better, I discovered he had been hiding something from me. One evening, I found a series of messages on his phone from a woman he had been talking to. My heart sank. I confronted him, and he admitted he had been talking to her for a few weeks. He swore it was just talking and nothing more, but I felt betrayed all over again. I packed my bags and took the kids to my parents' house. I was done. I couldn't go through this cycle of hurt and betrayal anymore. I filed for divorce the next day. It was one of the hardest decisions I had ever made, but I knew it was the right one. The fallout was tough. My husband was angry and tried to make things difficult, but I stood my ground. I got a lawyer and fought for custody of the kids. It was a long and exhausting process, but in the end, I got full custody. He was granted visitation rights, but I made sure they were supervised. During this time, I learned a lot about myself. I realized I had been putting up with so much because I was scared of being alone. But I wasn't alone. I had my kids, my parents, and my friends. They were my support system, and they helped me through the darkest times. I also learned about my husband's past. His mother had been hurtful, and he had never dealt with that trauma. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me understand why he was the way he was. It made me realize that I couldn't fix him. He had to want to change for himself, not for me or the kids. Now, 3 months later, I'm in a better place. I'm still working full-time, and my parents help with the kids. I've started saving money again, and I'm planning to move into my own place soon. My therapist has been a huge help, and I'm slowly rebuilding my self-esteem. My husband is still in therapy, and he's trying to be a better father. We have a civil relationship for the sake of the kids, but I keep my distance. I'm focusing on myself and my children. They are my priority, and I want to give them a stable and loving home. Thank you for reading and for all your support. Am I the idiot for being labeled a cheater? When my wife and I agreed to an open relationship. A 29 years old male, have been with my wife, 27 years old female, for 5 years, married for 2. For some background information, the only area of issue we've had in our relationship is intimacy, compatibility. It started normal, intimacy a couple of times a week, but after the 1-year mark, it slowed to a halt. We did counseling, sought medical help, experimented a lot, and came to the conclusion that my wife just has an abnormally low intimacy drive, as in once every couple of months low. My wife had a bit of an episode around the 2.5-year mark, thinking I was going to leave her. I had no interest in leaving as I love absolutely everything about her, and was more than willing to go without intimacy for the sake of the relationship. After a lot of discussion, she approached me about being able to have other intimacy partners. I was extremely hesitant, but tried it out as I travel frequently for work, and the likelihood of anyone finding out about a few one-night stands here and there was extremely low. Now I have a few hookups sporadically if it has been some time since my wife has been in the mood. These are on a need-to-know basis. I always use protection and get tested regularly. This has worked extremely well for us. We're both happy and obviously the relationship has progressed into marriage. Now onto the issue at hand. Due to not being as sneaky as I should have, I got caught on a date about 4 months ago by my wife's sister and her husband. My wife was on a girls' trip with some friends. I admit it looked bad, but hesitantly had them call my wife and she explained. Important to add, my wife's sister loves drama and never learned to keep anything to herself. So now my wife's entire side of the family hates me. I've been ignored at family functions and uninvited from birthday parties and anniversaries. My friend group and even members of my own family stopped talking to me because they don't associate with cheaters. My wife has been amazing through all of this. She has defended me at every point and went no or low contact with everyone that has mistreated me. However, as a result of this, they now say I'm isolating her from family and friends. They're painting me out to be an hurtful and controlling cheater who is keeping my wife away from them. We've had 2 wellness checks for my wife since all of this has started. Random women in the community have offered her money or a place to stay if she decided to leave me. Honestly, all of this has done a number on my mental health. I've completely cut out all other intimacy partners and have tried doing damage control. But our entire community treats me like an aggressor. I'm at a loss. I'm miserable. My wife's miserable. She misses her family and friends, but said she's determined to stick by me. The only solution we've come up with is she quits her job and we transfer to a new city, but that's likely to add fuel to the fire. Are there any other ways we can handle this situation? To add, I just came back to check in, and this had way more comments than I thought. I feel as though I should answer a few questions people had. Why was I on a date? I'd like to at least have dinner or drinks with the woman I'm planning on hooking up with. Not anything emotional, literally just having a conversation with someone before jumping into bed with them. I was under the impression this was normal. Why wasn't I being careful? I thought I was. The bar I was at was about 45 minutes from our city. My sister-in-law and her husband happened to stop in on their way back from the nearby casino. Why hasn't my wife shut her family down? She has repeatedly. She explained everything, including her low libido, to all her family members that were butting in. Her family thinks I brainwashed her and/or am threatening her to comply. Did my wife only suggest an open relationship because she was afraid to lose me? Maybe, but I made it abundantly clear that I wasn't going anywhere months before she suggested it. She hasn't shown any jealousy or anxiety about me being with other women. If anything, she was happier as to before she felt she had to have intimacy with me, whether she wanted to or not. This wasn't anything I forced her to do, just some weird views on marriage she had ingrained into her. Like I said, just a quick addition. I received some good advice and some very bad advice. I'll try out some of the things people mentioned, but I'm not yet sure if I want to post an update in the future. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'll be honest with you, if you were married to my sister and saw you on a date with someone else while my sister was out of town, I would probably freak out and feel the same as her family. My sister would explain, I would understand, but I wouldn't like you either, and I would think my sister is crazy. Would I treat you like her family has? Not really. Would I like you? Not really. I would respect my sister's wishes, however, and that's that. Can you change how and what people think? Not really. You should focus on your relationship with your wife. If this works for you, then so be it. Find new friends, new people to hang with, and hopefully, maybe someday, her family can come around. Next time, try not dating another woman. One thing to frick someone else, a whole other ballgame to go out in public whining and dining other women, embarrassing yourself and your wife. Comment 2. You can't fix this because you're the person her family doesn't trust. This is a big step and it might not work, but given that everyone apparently already knows, it might help if your wife posted something to the effect of, "We're in an open relationship. I know, I consent to it. I don't see this as a problem. If you want to talk to me about anything else, I'm here. But I'm not available for people trying to convince me that I'm being hurt." Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, 3 days ago, my wife and I decided to take a short trip to clear our heads. We went to a small cabin about 2 hours away from our city. It was supposed to be a relaxing getaway, but things took a turn. On the second day, my wife received a call from her mother. Her dad had a heart attack and was in the hospital. We packed up immediately and rushed back. When we got to the hospital, the tension was thick. Her family barely acknowledged me, but I was there for my wife, holding her hand and supporting her. While we were waiting for updates, my wife's sister cornered me in the hallway. She accused me of causing all this stress on the family and said that it was my fault her dad was in the hospital. I tried to stay calm and told her that now wasn't the time for this, but she wouldn't let up. My wife saw us and intervened, telling her sister to back off. This led to a huge argument right there in the hospital. My wife's mom came out and started crying, saying she couldn't handle all this drama right now. It was a mess. Later that night, my wife and I were back at home, and she broke down. She said she felt like she was being torn apart. She loves her family, but also loves me, and hates how they're treating me. She admitted that she's been feeling guilty about the open relationship and wondered if it was the right decision. This was a shock to me, because she had always seemed so confident about it. She said she felt like she had pushed me into it because she was afraid of losing me, and now everything was falling apart. I didn't know what to say. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. I told her that I never wanted her to feel like she had to do something she wasn't comfortable with. We talked for hours, and she finally admitted that she wanted to close the relationship. She said she missed the intimacy we used to have and wanted to try to work on that again. I agreed because, honestly, I missed it too. The next day, we went back to the hospital. Her dad was stable, but still in critical condition. Her family was still cold toward me, but I didn't care. I was there for my wife. We spent the whole day there, and by the evening, her dad was showing signs of improvement. My wife's mom actually thanked me for being there, which was a small but significant step. That night, my wife and I had a long talk about our future. We decided that moving to a new city might be the best option after all. She said she was willing to quit her job and start fresh somewhere else. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I knew it would be hard, but it seemed like the only way to escape the toxic environment we were in. But before I tell you more about our plans, there's something else I need to share. While we were packing up the cabin, I found a letter in my wife's bag. It was from her ex-boyfriend. He had written to her a few months ago, apologizing for how things ended between them, and saying he still had feelings for her. My heart sank. I didn't know if she had responded or if this was something she'd been hiding from me. I confronted her about it, and she admitted that she had read the letter but hadn't responded. She said she didn't want to add more stress to our already complicated situation. This revelation forced me to make a hard choice. I had to decide whether to trust her completely or let this letter create a wedge between us. I chose to trust her because I love her and believe in our relationship. But it wasn't easy. I still have doubts and fears, but I'm trying to push them aside and focus on rebuilding our connection. As for the fallout from all these events, my wife's family is still distant, but there have been small signs of improvement. Her mom has been more civil towards me, and her dad's condition has brought the family together in a way. My own family and friends are still keeping their distance, but I've decided to focus on the people who matter most to me, my wife and our future. Now, let me give you a bit of backstory that might help explain some of the underlying issues. My wife's family has always been very close-knit, almost to the point of being overbearing. Her sister in particular has always been the golden child and has a history of stirring up drama. My wife has always felt like she had to compete for her family's approval, which is why she's so torn now. She's always been the peacekeeper, trying to keep everyone happy, even at her own expense. On my side, I've always been the black sheep of my family. I've made mistakes in the past, and my family has never let me forget them. This whole situation has brought up a lot of old wounds and made me feel like I'm back in that place of being judged and misunderstood. It's been a struggle to stay strong and not let it affect my mental health. But before I wrap this up, there's one more thing. My wife and I have decided to see a new therapist together. We both agree that we need help navigating this complicated situation and rebuilding our relationship. We've had one session so far, and it was tough, but also hopeful. The therapist helped us see that we need to focus on our own needs and not let outside opinions dictate our happiness. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.